We ready? Okay, guys, I think we are ready to get started. I guess first of all, I'd like to welcome you all to a great venue, the H Club. It's a private members club for the creative industry, and they've let us use this space. There is I've been told, a new H Club being created in LA next month, which is, if you want to get membership, you can inquire downstairs. You can have membership to here, you can have membership when you're in the US. But just to start by saying thank you very much for the venue. During the event, if there is any comments, if there's anything you want to make, then there are a couple of hashtags on Twitter, hashtag gender representation or hashtag Mandy talks. And so feel free to contribute throughout the talk. It is just logistics-wise, it's about an hour of talk. It's 45 minutes of conversation with our panel here, and then there will be opportunity at the end for you to ask any questions. If you don't get a chance to, or the opportunity to ask any questions, then don't fret. People will be around after, and if that still doesn't suffice, then you can always email the Mandy team, and we'll make sure your question gets to the right person. So this is our first event actually as Mandy Talks, and it's intended to be a series of panel discussions that we'll undertake over the coming months. Each session will be selecting a hot topic that's relevant in the industry, and we'll bring in our expert panel to help us discuss the issues and provide their insight basically into the topic. As it says on the tin, the first one is gender representation and gender equality. It's a real hot topic. It's been talked about a lot in the press at the moment, and quite rightly so. And so we thought that would be a really relevant one to address. And when we talk about gender equality and representation, it's not just in front of the camera. We're also, talking also behind the camera and the production side of things. So I think that's pretty much it for logistics and welcome. Let me just introduce you now to our panelists. I am a little bit in awe of the panelists. I feel a little bit underskilled to be here and on the same stage as them. Before I introduce our four here, I do have to pass on apologies from Jeremy Zimmerman. He was intending to be here. As our industry tends to happen quite often, he has had a last-minute call away for work. I think he's in China, and so he sends his apologies. But that does give us more opportunity to get the knowledge and expertise of the four members that are here. So just starting, I'll take you through as an introduction. I could probably spend the whole hour talking through their amazing credits and achievements. I've condensed it very shortly for the sake of time. So forgive me if I don't list all of your brilliance. But first we have Serena Armitage, an Academy Award-winning film producer, founder of Redbreast Productions. And just to give you some context, Serena produced the film Stutterer in 2016, which won a huge number of awards, including an Oscar, which I'm super impressed by. We have Polly Kemp. Polly's been working as a professional actor for over 30 years here. 30. Sorry to mention. She's led an extremely successful career both on the screen and on the stage. She's actually been in my favourite film, Four Weddings and a Funeral, which is amazing. And she is also a co-founder and director of ERA 50/50, which is campaigning for equal representation for actresses in the industry. So it's really happy to have Polly here. Next we have Jing Lusi, and Jing is seems to be extremely busy when I look at your credits and list. So at the moment, Jing is currently starring in Stanley's Lucky Man on Sky One. Has co-starred in the film Crazy Rich Asians, and is about to be seen in upcoming Channel 4 series Pure, amongst lots of other things. Amy joins us, has 15 years of experience as a talent manager in the VFX industry. She's worked in the UK as well as in Canada. She's currently the head of talent at Framestore, which is, if you don't know, one of the world's leading visual effects companies. Amy also regularly provides input to the UK government on the skills agenda for the creative industries. and has also recently become an executive director for Access VFX, which aims to address a number of issues of diversity and inclusion, specifically in the visual effects industry. So let's get started. Let's please, I guess, give him a big warm welcome and a round of applause for joining us today. So we'll dive straight in. I want to do as little talking. You guys are the people that we're here to talk to. So the first section, what I'm really interested is we're here to talk about gender representation. It is talked about a lot at the moment, but I don't really want to assume that we all know what that is and what the situation is. So if I could come to you first, Polly. So you created the ERA 50/50 campaign. Could you? I mean, what caused you to start that? Do you have any sort of statistics or any sort of information that you can share that really drove you to feel the need to start the campaign?
Well, firstly, I'm an actress who's getting a bit older, so it was very much based on my personal experience of suddenly disappearing, becoming invisible. And then at the end of 2015, there was the Gina Davis Institute report, which was Gender Bias Without Borders, which was a study of 800 films across 11 countries. And, of the statistics, there were many statistics in there, but the critical ones were 2 men for every 1 woman, and in children's television, 3 men for every 1 woman. Also, the backdrop for us at the time was that Suffragette was made, and it felt a bit like, there's your film, ladies, off you go. And there wasn't necessarily anything that we were seeing on television that was showing that there was really a change. We did a tiny bit of research ourselves, which was we looked at 181 TV shows and films that benefited, that qualified for passed the cultural test and therefore qualified for high-end tax relief. And we just basically sat down with IMDb and collected numbers, and there too, on UK screens, was the same abiding stat of 2 men to every 1 woman. And that's just quantitative, that's not qualitative. There was a meeting of about 40 or 50 actresses in Soho, which was very much mine and my other co-founder, Elizabeth Barrington's own network. And we talked not only about the lack of work, but the quality of the work, the type of stories that we were, telling, the types of women that we were representing, and they didn't reflect our lived experiences. So we felt that there was, clearly what we wanted to do was have a campaign that not only looked at increasing the numbers of women across a season, or, we weren't foolish enough to think that people would do it on every single show and every single film, but it was for broadcasters to look at their seasons and for theatre programmers to look at their seasons and count their numbers and to begin to address the gender inequality.
Okay.
Is that the answer?
Yeah, I think it was a perfect answer. It's a great way to get us started, so thank you. Jing, if I can come to you as, again, fellow actor, in terms of the importance, so we have the data that's suggesting, not suggesting, it's factual that there are less women in certain roles. Why is it important? Why is it important to have a sort of equal representation?
Because it's reflective of society, and obviously, like for me as well, I'm an actress in the industry, but I have a double-edged sword where I'm also ethnic. So as my career has sort of gone in the last, yes, ethnic and female, we should have been drowned at birth a long time ago. But as my career in the industry, like 12 years, I've seen a massive change in terms of not only a shift from I wouldn't say we're equality, but awareness of equality and the need for equality and also the need for diversity. The only thing that is a concern of mine is that it's one thing to just crunch numbers and say 50-50. It's another thing to be like, yeah, but why are they there? Are they there because they're good? I found myself reading a lot of scripts or being called in for meetings where it's like, we need a token Asian. And I'm like, that is more insulting than not calling me in. Also, reading a lot of scripts where, yes, there's more women in the projects, but the good stories are still go to men. And, you see the breakdown and it's like so-and-so's wife, so-and-so's girlfriend. It's like, am I defined by a man? Also, I find that quite insulting. Like, show me the character breakdown for my character on her own. Does she exist without the guy? And so I think it's important, but I also think it's important as to why, because I think I'm very, very passionate about good characters and good representation. It doesn't have to be that, people are just seen as heroes, but don't always negatively depict certain types. So for me, I think there's two parts of the story. There's the equality, but there's also make it a good representation.
Something real.
Something real, not just there to be pretty.
So we have in the world of acting, we have, and if we look at the numbers on our site and Mandy, we pretty much have 50-50 in terms of male and female split. So there's equal amount of professionals on our site in the industry, but yet there's a huge imbalance in the number of females working in the right roles. And that is a huge issue that we're here and we're trying to address. When we look at production, when we look at visual effects, for example, is that the same issue, or is there a slightly different issue with the production side of things?
There's the same issue in terms of numbers. It's also about 25 to 30% female. It varies slightly from company to company. But the reasons, I think, are different and the same to some extent. The visual effects industry is obviously computers. That's what we do. We make stuff with computers. And like every other science, technology, engineering company, there aren't enough women who want to get into those careers. The stat is that at the age of 7, girls start losing interest in STEM subjects at school, which is hugely depressing. And so there just aren't enough young women coming through the education system who want to do these jobs. But Polly and I were talking before and saying it is linked, because it comes back to what Jing was just saying about the stories that are told. Our young girls seeing role models in the films and TV shows and games that they play who do these kind of jobs, and therefore make it a valid choice for them to want to go and do those jobs. And that's a question. And I think the answer is no, there aren't enough role models.
And so you think
it's same but different.
You think that is an issue? So in terms of naturally there at the moment, there's more males going into that those types of roles. You feel that there is a need to try and change that?
If I said to this room, here's a piece of paper, draw me a computer geek, guarantee you, every single one of you would draw
me.
a white male with glasses. Guarantee you. And where does that stereotype come from? It comes from the media we consume. Of course it does. So,
Okay. Brilliant. And Serena, if I would come across to you then. So from your experience, when you're putting together your production, your teams, do you see trends where there are, let's say, there are more male applicants, more female? Do you see there are specific roles in the industry which tend to, at the moment, suit?
I think I sort of specifically go out and look for women and female stories, really. That's kind of what my company is most interested in. And so from my experience, I suppose, there's a lot of stories about women. Women are telling stories, and it's just sort of finding them and getting them out there. I get approached by women because of that, so actually I probably don't see a massive disparity in the amount of men that approach me as women. I think when I worked at ITV, I did find that the women all seemed to be in production and the men all seemed to be directors. And I was a director, and I think I found it did feel like it was slightly more male-dominated there, and that the men seemed to do better. And the few women who did, I sometimes felt like that was because they were kind of falling into, in with the boys, or it was almost like, it felt like, that they were, I don't know, almost, it didn't feel like they were really, I'm trying to explain the best way to, but they almost felt, some of the women that were doing well almost felt a bit anti-women in that way, rather than that they were encouraging other women to come back. So it didn't always feel like the most nurturing environment to be in. But I would like to think that would have changed a bit, because that was, I guess about 10 years ago, really, that I was doing that at ITV. That I think I make a big effort to make sure that doesn't happen in my company.
And have you seen it change over time?
There's definitely a lot more women directors coming. I'm aware of so many more female directors that are coming out of NFTS that are, trying to make their first films at the moment. I feel that people like the BFI are very, very interested in hearing those voices coming through, and I'd say it feels to me like they're prioritising them. I'm on a BFI scheme that they took in. The intake was 25 people, 17 of us were women. So. And we're all producers out there looking for stories that we connect to, that we feel are unique. So, that there'll be reason to feel that we will be developing 50% stories that are about women, or that sort of have female directors, female writers, but they won't be, they're not, my stories aren't hitting the screen yet, so, and they're not even hitting actors yet. So, I have been pretty shocked by some of the stats I've been reading in the lead up to this, especially when you hear about things going backwards.
Yeah. Directors UK recent numbers from last year showed that the numbers of directors have gone down. So,
and I don't know whether is that about people taking a step back at a certain point in their career? Is that people taking time out to go and have children? Are they suddenly, because if they're all coming out the film schools, and why are they not getting through? Yeah,
that's the question, isn't it? Is what if we are raising more awareness and trying to encourage more women into certain roles? I mean, is there a reason that's going down?
I think because there's a hierarchy. So if you look at TV, you're talking about executive producers who are ruled by commissioners who are it doesn't sort of stop at the director. The director comes in at quite a low, especially for TV, so I don't understand what's going on with my wire. The director for TV comes in pretty much below everyone else, basically sits on top of the actors and the runners. So they're answerable to all the producers, then who are answerable to all the execs. And I've been on shows where women have been hired and fired because they were just micromanaged at every single level on set. It was so uncomfortable, to the point where you've got you're taking a note from the director who you kind of are meant to just, that's where it ends, that's who speaks to you, that's it. And then 2 seconds later the producer comes over and they turn it on its head. And you're like, Mummy and Daddy are fighting, but when you're in that situation, you see it quite clearly. And I'm not trying to shit on anything, but it's kind of like, don't just hire women and put them in the firing line, because that isn't the point. The point is that it's a trickle-down effect. Yeah. You just insert some female directors and go like, we did it. Look, if you look at the numbers, it's 50-50, but you're not giving them any free rein. You're making them feel worse. And it's almost like you control them to a point when you're like, you see, I told you you'd be bad, or, we proved a point. Get rid of them.
But I think you're right, absolutely, but I don't think there's 50-50 directors. Certainly things, I think continuing drama, is it Vera has only had 2 female directors. I think in the 4 seasons
No.
Yeah. So it's I think there is a kind of micromanagement that happens in television that actually women and men, producers can come in and, can be quite controlling. I think that is a difficulty, and I think that's around the money, people being risk averse and then wanting definitely to guarantee that they're going to have a job at the end of it. So they want to make sure that what they're producing is going to, get an audience, or they're going to get another job. And I think that's where women fall foul of it, because in the desire to create a hit, or the desire to definitely get funded, that will mean that people will only choose directors that they believe have got, that can do it, and that generally or might not be a woman. And I think distributors and salespeople have a lot to say about that. You know, certainly when you're putting together a film, they're going to have a lot to say about who they're going to let direct it as well. And I think women fall foul of that. You know, men generally are hired on potential. Women are hired on experience. Women have to really prove themselves, you know, and so sometimes they are set up to fail, I think, because they really have to do better than men.
And is that, I mean, at that executive level, the people that are hiring, the producers, the directors, is that predominantly men? I don't know any stats on that myself, actually. So, I mean, are there many sort of, are there many women in that sort of executive position, in those executive roles?
Quite a lot of female commissioners.
Yeah.
So sort of it would stand to reason, but that they would want to hire female directors and female writers and speaking stories. Well, you know, they'd be wanting to tell equal stories that were going to serve their equal audience. So it does seem a bit sort of strange that.
But this is where there is a bit of a disconnect.
Dramas, especially, I think they're a bit. Some of these continuing dramas maybe are old teams that have been around for a while and aren't shaken up enough, and they kind of keep going back to the same directors, and they know that they are a safe pair of hands, and those directors are men because they're the people they've been hiring forever, and they need to basically bring new people in and take more risks. I mean, I don't know. I don't know when that's going to happen.
And I guess we're also assuming that if there are more females in those higher levels, that they will hire females. They may not.
I think that's the assumption, but I don't think that's the truth.
And I think having, you know, we as an organisation have gone and met some of the commissioners, and there is a very weird disconnect. So often they will say, we really want to hire women and we want to commission female writing, but there just aren't enough good scripts or there aren't enough female directors. And yet when we talk to organisations like the Writers Guild or other groups of female writers, or we talk to Directors UK, they talk about the fact that actually not enough women are getting through. They're not getting the chance to even get their scripts on the table or get in the room to be interviewed. And we can't really fathom that out.
No, so I guess that's my natural next question is, what is the cause? What do you think is driving that?
Unconscious bias.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think people don't realise how strong that is.
And I think that causes one of the biggest challenges is the fact that if it is unconscious, it's very difficult to tackle that. It's certainly very difficult to change that in a short term. If people are unaware of, they're actually making certain choices. So
I think also as an industry, that a lot of it is based on relationships, established relationships and closed networks. There isn't necessarily any transparency about how people are hired. So, you know, in theatres, for instance, literary managers, I don't think those positions are ever advertised, and they are often men. You know, some agencies don't represent 50-50. They might have a TV directors department which has predominantly men and much fewer women. I've totally lost my thread.
You did mention the BBC, and they obviously in their position with their funding, they do get the spotlight. They've been in the press recently a lot for their imbalance of salaries. It's almost I can see from their perspective, they have a core business to produce, to make things, and then looking at salaries almost an afterthought in a way of, are we being fair? Are we being equal? Are men and women of similar roles receiving a similar salary? From your experience, Amy, for Framestore, is it something that's on the agenda? Is it something that is that Framestore are aware of, that you're aware of, or is it something that it is sort of an administration almost task, or how is it viewed?
Well, I'm pleased to report that we have equal pay at Framestore, so that's good.
Yeah.
And we did that without thinking about it. That's also nice.
Okay.
So that's good. But it's different in it's sort of, I've been listening to a lot of this conversation. It is different because unlike productions that are for the period of the project, whether that's a TV show, film, whatever, visual effects, we are companies and we employ long term and we have employees, and that's a very different environment. And so actually most of our recruiters in the industry just happen to be female. I don't know how that worked out that way, but it did.
Yeah.
There are men, but we're mostly female. And yeah, because we have big HR teams who are consistent and constant and look at these things, we have less of those issues than I think the production side do, because they're there all the time,
Yes,
and they're
that's
paying
fluid.
attention to it, and they're looking into it and making sure that we're being fair and consistent. So I think it's a lot easier for us in some of these areas to ensure parity and ensure we're looking at these things. Mind you, you would argue that the BBC are in the same situation. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
So, and Serena, do you see any evidence of that? When you're, do you see any differences in the sort of the value that people put on their services, and when you're working, when you're putting together your production?
Yeah, I think certainly in terms of actors in big roles, I mean, they seem to have a specific value. I don't think it's always regardless of their, I don't think that's regardless of their gender, but certainly I find that, actors have a value that means something to sales agents, and that sort of reflects, that's how their pay's worked out generally. So I would be quite worried, I think, if suddenly I was told that it needs to be even across, say, our leads, even though they've got the same role on screen, because sometimes somebody's demanding a certain role and that's linked to how many bums on seats they're guaranteeing. And if I had to do that for the other actor or actress, but they weren't guaranteeing the same amount of bums on seats, it probably would mean that I couldn't finance the film, I think, because I couldn't. So, I mean, that kind of does make sense. I hate that sort of model of financing, but that's sort of how, I much prefer to be able to take that, the commercial, the reality of making films, unfortunately. I think in terms of the actual crew and the people behind the camera, I think you sort of negotiate each person's fees, and again, you're always on incredibly tight budgets, so it's really what you feel somebody's happy to do that job for. We do have pay brackets about like trainee level, and I try and just stick to those pay brackets, but among like different HODs, that might be, you probably would negotiate a separate rate for, say, your costume designer and your, I mean.
But do you see any disparity between the approach of a man versus a woman?
I think men are more likely to demand more, and then therefore you may well end up giving them more, and you're not probably going to want, if you feel you can't afford to equal it out within your budget, you just think, well, that's what they're saying they will work for, and that's so, and that was definitely my experience when I worked in TV. I always used to find out that I was getting paid less than other people when I was filling exactly the same role, and often thought I was better at it. Yeah. And I was like, why the hell are they getting like 200 quid a week more than me? And then when I found that out, I went and asked for a pay rise, because I was, I knew that I was better, but I just didn't think to ask for it, and I felt that somebody would give me a pay rise if they felt that I was sort of worth it. And
did you get it?
Yeah, I got my rate up right up quite quickly, but obviously people don't often tell you what they're earning, what their rates are, especially if they know they're on more.
It comes back to this experience potential thing again, though. Like, there's lots of stats out there, in gender equality generally, that says a man will go for a job where he meets 25% of the criteria of the job and figure, well, I'll figure out how to do the 75% if I get the job. Whereas a woman will generally only go for a job if she meets 90 to 95% of the criteria for the job. So it's this whole experience potentially, and also I think pay is linked to that as well. A man will expect to be paid for his potential. I can do the other 75%, so pay me for it. Whereas a woman will be like, well, I can only do 50%, so pay me for the 50% I can do, not the 50% I might be able to do. So it's all this same. It's the same argument.
It's slightly different for actors. I think there's a different. I mean, I think it's pretty well documented now that there were an awful lot of actresses
Well,
who were
yes.
doing really, really well, but were being paid half.
Yeah.
But the other leading actor was being paid. And I think then, so, you know, it's based on your CV and your the amount of work you do. And then as you get older, what happens is the parts get smaller, they're less available, your CV begins to look thinner. And so, you know, if you're one of the lucky fish to swim through the net and, you know, continue to operate at a very high level, and that's a tiny proportion of the acting, the female acting talent, then the rest of us who are sort of journey women who are working and, you know, just being part of a company, what we find is our money begins to drift down. And because there aren't as many parts available, we negotiate on what we've done. And so often some men who might be similar age as me, similar experience really in terms of quality of drama that they do, but because they do twice as much in the year, because there's twice as many parts available to them, they can negotiate considerably more. So, you know,
There's probably more women going for the female parts as well, but if there's
Less of
them.
So we get tied into a kind of vicious cycle of ever decreasing returns, and so, you know, I think women particularly suffer economically. The acting in the actress population, I think, do suffer.
And do you think we can solve these kinds of issues within the industry? I mean, it sounds very much like there may be more, you know, wider sort of cultural issues. I mean, are there things that we can do within the industry to try and equal that balance?
But for me personally, I think there should be 50-50 writing commissions, produced stuff on television, because I think it's statistically proven that when women write, they write pretty much 50-50. I mean, there are plenty of women that write just stories with just men in it, and there are plenty of men who write stories with just women in it, and both of those groups do it very well. However, the research shows that women on the whole write a much more balanced script, and men tend to write, I think it's 65-35 in favour of men. So it makes sense that you actively commission and produce more writing by women. And I think women also, because it's about they tell stories that are my lived experience, rather than, you know, as you said, being the adjuncts
My version
to another story, or lacking any kind of agency. So for me, that would make a big difference.
Okay. Now, I mean, we have there is certainly more awareness, and I think it feels like there's more of an attempt to have women in, the more powerful and meaty roles. Jing, have you noticed in terms of your career, has there been any significant change in recent years of the types of roles that you are working in or auditioning for?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot more women-led projects. There's definitely more women in the roles. I see more women producers. I've been quite lucky because my first show was an ensemble show, so that, you know, we take turns to like rotate the leads and stuff, and so there was quite a good balance. And then I found myself in a female-led show, which was Scott and Bailey, which was Saran Jones and Leslie Sharp, brilliant, and it was a production company, Red Productions, that was headed up by women. And so I've kind of found myself in those projects, but I have definitely just been, by reading scripts, have definitely, especially on the American side, but what I have noticed is a trend of writing women as leads, great, but leads as men. Like, women are effectively men, and they talk like men, they behave like men, there isn't the nuances of being a woman. It's basically a man with tits and, you know, the genitalia, and I'm like, that's not interesting. That is not interesting to play. She talks to everybody like she's a bulldog, and then, which is fine, but when you see an oversaturation of those roles and you're constantly just taping and you're like, it's, again, that's not realistic reflection of what women are like. And there's also a negative portrayal of a very small representation of women. So I think that's the fear that I have in suddenly going, we need to see more women, we need to see more diversity, we need to have this yardstick of 50-50. Is like, that is fine if you can back it up with quality. don't just write women into roles and leads because you need to see more women on screen, because if you have, even as lead characters, if you have crap characters, people aren't going to watch it. And then what the commissioners will say is like, you see, no one likes female-led dramas. No one likes, let's just revert back to the, so it's going to swing one way, it's going to backfire on itself, and then it's going to go the other. We all knew with Crazy Rich Asians, if this film flops, the studios, because they underpaid us like Asians, but we knew that if it flopped, the studios, not just Warner Brothers, but every other studio would be like, you see, nobody wants to see Asians on screen. Let's not even, we can't even recruit the tiny peanuts we gave and fed us. So not worth the investment. Let's go back to the whole, covertly, white people-led thing. So when that film was a smash, they suddenly were like, oh my God, they make us a lot of money, let's do more. And now you're suddenly seeing a huge influx of Asian stuff. And I'm like, let it be good. Don't write off the back of Crazy Rich Asians, which is an opening, and then make a load of crap. Because then a few years down the line, the execs will be like, ugh, they all bombed, they all lost money, nobody wants to see Asians. Crazy Rich Asians clearly was an anomaly. Let's revert back to the old formula. That will happen with women, diversity. It will, if you oversaturate a market without quality, that will happen. Okay. And that's what I'm scared of.
Yeah, well said. Serena, I mean, in the process of when you're casting, you're making those decisions, has that changed at all? Is there any more, is there more focus on the gender of who you're casting for certain roles than there used to be?
I mean, I obviously cast the roles that are in the story, so, in terms of the gender, so I guess, and with extras and things, I guess the background actors when they, I think I would just always try and keep that as balanced as possible within the rest of the piece. I think it's quite easy, they're easy roles, but they're not important, that if they're background roles and we don't even know kind of whether they're male or female, because there's that background. I think we're probably more interested in the speaking parts.
Although interestingly, the Gina Davis Institute also found that in background, in crowd scenes, women only made up 17% of the crowd. And I guess supporting artists need to work too. I mean, that's definitely one of the things that we've tried to talk about, which is get your seconds, or always have 50-50 background too, because there's that other unconscious bias statistic, which is that if there are more than 17% women weirdly in a room, men think that it's equal, and that if it gets to 34%, they think it's more women than men. So, this is, I'm just reciting a statistic that some research that I've read. So it is interesting that you say that. I think it's really important that, that you're surrounding your action with 50-50 so that you can address that unconscious bias in your viewing.
So that's sort of on one of the, that we definitely do, because that's part of our funding requirement. And that feels quite easy to do. I think, certainly there's not a lack of, it's not difficult to find those people, and in a way that's a very easy way to say, yes, we are, and, we have gender parity. I think it's then, so I think, I don't know, it's, I guess, that's one of the areas that I find interesting to talk about, which is off screen, but it's one of the probably hardest places for me to find women for is in the camera department and lighting department. And that is one area where, I was reading something today that was saying, and this is about whether women, and whether gender is equal or identical, and are there more women are, more men are firefighters than women, and they were arguing in this report that's because if you do a strength, that's because there's physical strength tests involved, and in those physical strength tests, generally women, there's more men that pass that test than women, and I think you could argue the same for some of the camera team, but then to get to a DOP level where it has nothing to do with your strength, you don't need those skills at all. So how can you get women into DPs if they're being kind of into DP roles, if they're potentially being treated with bias earlier, lower down in the camera team. But I don't know whether, if you're running a camera team, are you thinking, I want like a big heavy to carry things around, and you may be and think, I don't know. It's a
No, I think it's interesting. I mean, are there areas within the industry which it's fine to not achieve 50-50, whether that's bias in one way or the other? And it does tend to be more in the sort of technical roles.
I'm going to say I disagree with that. I think there is no reason why you can't have 50-50 across the industry in every single role, other than perhaps a specifically named character in the story who has to be that because she is a mother of 3 children that she biologically gave birth to. I mean, I can't really...
But I think there's a difference between imposing equality and just there's people with different interests. If you walk onto a set, and I understand completely what you're saying about, this physical strength and stuff, but if you walk onto a set, you clearly see, like, the lads group, and maybe it's a culture as well, but then you go to makeup and it's all women, and it's like, do you want to make men do makeup who don't want to do makeup? But if you're imposing 50-50, does it flip the other way around to be like a very female-dominated department that women probably like to do because they've grown up doing it? Do you flip that on its head and say, like, okay, ladies, time to go home because we need to insert more men?
Yeah, indeed.
I'm just saying, but like, so I respect the 50-50, but I also think let people, if it's a case of being blocked by your gender, that's wrong. But if there's a natural draw or natural pull towards an artistic endeavor, like makeup or costume and stuff, because you definitely see the equality split there.
We don't, 50-50, we say 50-50 because that's the easiest thing. We're talking about equality. That's the way numerically you can represent it. We would never say you have to do that. We know that's impossible. You can't force people to do it. Quotas are illegal anyway. Yeah. So, but I suppose along the lines of what you said, it's about not restricting. It's looking at the obstacles to fair and equal employment. So if there is a young woman out there and she thinks, actually, do you know what, I'd like to be a DOP, but I don't really see anybody like me, so maybe I won't do that. It's about making sure that there are role models there for women to aspire to do those jobs. I mean, I'm sure you must have had this. I've worked on sets where it's been predominantly male, and it's an environment that's I'm used to, but it sometimes doesn't feel that friendly and warm. And I've recently just worked on a show, a film which was a female director, female writers, female producers, predominantly female talent, and it was great for me because it's very much a first-person experience. I'm with women, and for me, being in that, you suddenly are aware of a lot of men get to experience this all the time. There's just an ease, and I just like that to be my employment environment more often. I'm not saying it has to be like that because I'm used to very male environments, but I know.
Having that balance on set definitely does provide a better area, a better vibe on set. It just, that's why I think it does create better work. It creates just feels more real as well. And I always, it's really uncomfortable, I think, especially if you've got a female actor doing a scene and they're completely surrounded by a group of kind of, like, just a totally male crew. It can feel a bit of a strange, I don't know, you're both actors, but it feels like it could feel just like not a very nice environment, really, especially if you're doing like specific scenes. It feels just a bit unnatural, and you don't have that in most other workplaces.
I've worked in the city, yes, you do.
And Amy, with Access VFX, is 50-50 also one of your objectives?
So Access VFX has quite a lot of objectives. Yeah, one is 50-50 for sure, because there really is no reason that computer artists can't be 50-50 at all. But it's not just about gender. We also have a woeful lack of ethnic diversity in our industry, and that's appalling, so that needs addressing as well. We also, like a lot of the rest of the industry, have a lack of socioeconomic diversity. So there's a number of targets that we've set ourselves, not just the gender representation.
And so, I mean, I guess it's kind of a nice point to move on to, what is being done, what can we do? So in terms of the work that you're doing, you've set yourself targets. What are some of the initiatives that are taking place to actually try and achieve those?
Sure. So obviously there's work with children themselves. So we've done a lot of work out on the road. In October we did Access VFX Month, and we hit 17 cities in 4 weeks in every region of the UK. So we did Ireland, Scotland, Wales and England, and ran workshops, went into classrooms, offered up taster sessions, all sorts of things to get kids hands-on with the basics of the kit. But also we ran events, and this is really important for teachers and careers advisors, because part of the reason that girls are being switched off from these jobs is actually just a lack of understanding amongst adults about these jobs. And when you are 14 and you're choosing, subjects to go on to next, you are very influenced by teachers and careers advisors and your parents, and so educating those people about these jobs is really important. I think a lot of people still think the media generally isn't a proper job, so trying to educate them that there are proper jobs, it's okay. So all of that work we're doing, but then also the bit we've touched on a bit is there's hiring diversity, but there's also inclusion, which is the other part, which is great. So you hire all these people, you hire 50-50, you hire more diverse backgrounds, and then you bring them in the door and they don't feel like they belong, because the people already there don't encourage them to feel like they belong. And so that's the other piece is doing. So we've done unconscious bias training in all of our businesses, and other sort of training to try and get people thinking about these topics and make our work environments more inclusive for when we are bringing young people in from different backgrounds. So.
And do you see, when you've set your targets, have you set them a few years ahead? Because I guess if you're focusing on young people, it takes some time for those guys to filter through.
It's going to take some time for them to filter through, so yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then from a more of an active perspective, in terms of the work that you're doing, Polly, and what sort of initiatives, what are you encouraging in the performer side of things?
Well, we had an event last year at BAFTA where we invited over 200 industry gatekeepers, and we presented our case, and an awful lot of them came back to us and are working with us. So, most of our work is about education. So taking our stats into production companies and trying to encourage them to produce more female writing talent, to look at their pools of talent that they're hiring anyway and try and make those bigger. We're working with a consortium of women at the moment from various other bits of the industry to approach the Arts Council and get the Arts Council to look at the way that they fund. I think that's it. I mean, it's mostly about awareness raising, and we continue to do that as actively as we possibly can.
Okay. And I guess that the more people are aware of potential unconscious bias, it stops being unconscious anymore and becomes a decision that they can make.
Data is quite dull, but data is brilliant in terms of just smacking people with the facts. So, for instance, you might think there are a lot more women who are directing things, but actually Directors UK figure says it's gone down, and I think it was only at 16%. So I think it's gone down to 14% last year. So, there's what you think you're seeing, and there's actually what the numbers say. Yeah. And so that's the kind of area that we try to operate in.
Okay. And then in terms of the positive actions, is there a point where you think we go too far and you actually start to discriminate against
I think
men?
It's really important that we keep men on this journey with us, because it's we're 50-50 men and women. We just want to make sure that men feel that they want to fight this battle too, and that they. And I think there's lots of feminist men out there who really want that. But I worry with things like targets that it could start to alienate men a little bit, and it might start to feel like it's not being done on quality. Kind of going back to your point, so that we just. Just to kind of keep them in the conversation, sort of fighting the battle with us important.
Okay. Now we're getting towards the end of this. Before we move to some questions, I have one question each for you, quick fire round. So, Serena, we'll go down from you. What do you think is the biggest challenge to achieve equality?
I think it is, at the heart of the story is just getting those stories on the screen. And I don't think, there's an audience for them. In my eyes, I feel that those are commercial stories. So it's just making sure people are going to fund them and persuading them that there is an audience for them.
Okay. Amy, in terms of your experiences so far, 50-50, is it working?
Oh, wow. Okay, pressure. No.
No?
No. It hasn't, the needle hasn't moved far enough.
Okay, I'd certainly agree with that. Jing, if there was one thing you could change in the industry from your experience to try and improve the gender representation, what would you do?
That's a big question.
I have a magic wand, you can use it.
I don't think there is one solution. I think it starts with better stories, because as an actor, I'm always like better characters, and it's not about the actor, because the audience want to see better characters. They want better stories. They don't want to sit there and be numbed. They watch the Kardashians if they did. So if you're telling a story, make it good. So then who are we saying? Who? I don't know where that goes. The writer, but then someone's commissioning the writer. Yeah. Lit agents. It's just too big. It's a whole thing. Everyone just has to look at their own perspective, their own sector, and be like, how can I make this good? How can I bring quality and not just do something for the ease or sake or tick boxes? Because a lot of boxes are fine to be ticked if they're good boxes.
Yeah. Okay, that's perfect. And then we started with you, Polly, so it feels right to sort of finish the questions there. With everybody in the room here, we have people from the industry, both from performer side, production side. If they could take away something which may support and improve the gender representation, what would that be when they leave the room today?
Oh.
These are not easy quick fire questions. We're the opposite of quick fire.
Well, I'd just say if you're in casting, you're directing and you're writing, Jing and I are what women look like. You're at the younger end, I'm at the older end, but we're both dynamic, interesting women. So, I mean, really, in a way, it's pretty much what you said. It's, commission, write, produce stories that reflect
authentic,
the lived experience of women. And don't underestimate your audience, because I think audiences want to be challenged. If you offer people lamb and beef, they'll pick lamb and beef, but actually they might be really interested in a smorgasbord over there with a lot more to offer. So I would say go to the smorgasbord.
No, I mean, I certainly agree. And I think if you when you see shows and they are they're crowbarring people into roles that aren't actually meant for them, you can spot it a mile away, and it doesn't add anything to the value of the performance. So that's the questions from me. I'm going to now go to the audience questions. So I think we have a microphone. So if anyone actually has a question, then please just raise your hand. We have a very keen person here. If you could say your name, what area of the industry you're in, and then if you do have a question for anyone specific, then please just let them know.
My name's Natalia. I'm an actress. My question is, where do production crews, actors go, writers, or people are sort of changing, so they might be an actor who wants to write, or production who wants to filming but they want to do design. Where do they go to find these opportunities? Because the wonderful things that you've all said, where do we go to find those? Oh, actually there's a writing competition, or we could write this, or we're looking for a cast, this, to use our experiences, because it's so many closed shops, there's so many sort of, like you were saying, on a film set especially, that we're all different levels. Where can the student who's just come out of university or college, they might have a better sort of inkling of where to go, but those people have been doing it for years. And like you said, as you get older as an actor, and I'm also ethnic, jobs that have been mine and been taken away because I'm not ethnic enough. And then who do I go and where do I go with that? What do I do? So where are those places that we can go to? Is it just BAFTA? Is it Equity? Is it Mandy? Is there places that we can see, oh, do you want to apply for this? Are you a woman interested in that? So that we can all here have an opportunity to change the 50-50 as well? Otherwise, again, it feels like a closed shop. Is there, do you know, organisations where we can go?
The BFI, I would say, definitely is, an amazing organisation, and I wouldn't have been able to move from TV and set up as a producer without the BFI. And I wish I'd kind of known about them earlier, because they do have a lot of resource and a lot of schemes. But, and then sort of the BBC writers' rooms, and, they are all very competitive. But those the Channel 4 have similar kind of writers' rooms. Those would be the main places that I would say first. But the BFI have hubs in each different place, so if you can go to your actual hub, then there's I can actually point you in people in directions of where at the BFI to go to. Those would be the main entry level places I could recommend.
I'm not an expert on production, so I wouldn't know, but
there are other individual. There's things like, there are other things around, but I think you'll find a lot of resource on the BFI website. Like things like Lush, the cosmetics company, now run a film fund, which is there's quite a lot of short film funds for people who are just, especially women who are wanting to break into directing, or and men and women who are wanting to break in, but some are specifically female. And some are for everyone. Probably there's some that's specifically male too. So I think it's just trying to find those out. But the BFI is a good resource.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Megan. I'm currently studying an MA at Drama Centre, and I was just wondering, as an actor who's hopefully going to be entering the industry very soon, to anyone on the panel, but particularly the actors among you, what would your advice be? Because obviously at this stage in your career you don't have much choice in terms of what roles you can take. You're hoping kind of anything just comes along, but you also don't want to be stuck playing girlfriend and sister and best friend, and even choosing screenplays for scene work has been really challenging for the women in the class, which is more than the men. So, if you have any advice for someone at the beginning of their career.
I was at Drama Centre, that's where I trained. I just say don't limit yourself. Don't. Certainly at drama school, if I was to go back and talk to the me that was at drama school, I allowed the Drama Centre, the then Drama Centre management, who were pretty bloody awful, to be honest. It was very, very austere. I allowed them to tell me what I should be, and when I look at myself, the pictures of myself then, I just think, why did I allow that? I sort of said, that is who I am, what they say I am, and I didn't kind of go out and create my own narrative. So I would just. That's not very practical. I would just look at, I would look at scenes, plays which have got great men's speeches in them and try and do that. I'd just push yourself and be whatever you think you can be.
I think also, Jing, you said something brilliant earlier, which was just say no. If you have your morals, if you know what you want to achieve, then it's don't make those choices to do the things that you don't think are suitable. And it's that, I guess a lot of people have that pressure to feel like they have to do it, they're missing out on the next opportunity, and that's what essentially creates a lot of the issues that we have, is because it's accepted, because you think you have to. You don't have to. It's not, if you have to break your own morals or your own core beliefs to be able to do it, it's a question, is it really right for you? So it just be pragmatic with your thinking of what you're accepting.
I think you're very beautiful, and you're entering an industry. You're white, you're blonde. You're going to enter into an industry where there's going to be a lot of people like you, and that isn't to disincentivize you. It's almost gone the other way, because now everybody wants diversity. So what I would say personally for you is to absolutely figure out you as a person, the roles you want to play. When I first entered the industry, I never went into drama school, so I had it like so hard. I didn't have an agent, and all I was seen for was immigrant, prostitute, takeaway worker, and it killed my soul. I studied law. My parents are professors. They came over via academia, and I went up for these roles, soul destroyed, had to put on an accent for a good few years of my life. And I never got those roles. And this was like, crappy student films to TV. And I never wanted to play them, but I was like, the only way I can get a job is to lower myself, to do something that morally offends me, to hopefully someone will cast me, and then I can get a big break, and then I can get in. But I never got them, and it was this weird catch-22. It was like the less I got hired, the more it killed my spirit, and then And my first proper role was a doctor on Holby, and my dad was so proud because he was like, she's a doctor, because I let them down when I didn't become a lawyer. But and then I've gone on to play like detective roles and lawyers and things like that, and it's like, find out who you are before the industry starts dictating to you, oh, you need to be this person, you need to be the beautiful blonde girl, you need to be this, because if it doesn't connect with you energetically, you just won't get those roles, and you'll blame yourself. And I'm so glad that I never got those roles, because the girls that did get those roles, they've gone down the pan, because their careers they kind of got pigeon boxed very early on. So be true to yourself, carve out your niche. It is going to be harder for you than it was 5 years ago, ironically, but there'll be so much work for somebody like you, as long as you can be like, this is me, not who you say I am. So find out who you are, and then tell the industry, don't let them tell you.
Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more question. So.
Okay, this is kind of following that, but also with the gender thing. So you spoke about men being more forward with asking for their value. Do you think that, I'm a writer, an actress, there is that whole thing of unsolicited material and blah, blah, blah. Do you think being quite forceful as a woman and knowing your worth as a writer and actress gets respected in the same way? Or do you think it can sometimes be like, oh my God, they're annoying, like we get so many submissions all the time, we don't really want to look at this? Like, how do you go about it as a woman and still being respected in that way?
Good question.
I mean, I respond better to people who are less forceful, and I think I get quite a lot of emails. I mean, the men are on average, their emails I get are much more forceful, and I have people kind of telling me that this is a brilliant story, and if I don't do it, I'm missing out on the biggest opportunity, and and it really turns me right off. That's like that's my personal response, but there must be other people who go, oh yeah, look at this. So I don't know what the answer is to that, because personally I prefer people who come with a slightly a gentler approach, and that might be, I don't know how other women in the industry, if maybe if there's more male producers, which there are on average, if they respond better to that response, then that might be why there's more male writers. I'm not sure.
I think also a little bit about, rather than thinking what the person wants you to be, just who are you? Just be yourself in that, and then that, I think that would be more honest and maybe more successful than trying to adapt yourself in that writing to suit the receiver.
I think also when you're an actor, the product is you. And so you take every rejection so hard, because you're like, oh, it's not this crappy Hoover that I'm selling. I used to be a Hoover saleswoman. It's a crap Hoover. You're like, I'm a piece of shit. If you don't like me, I'm a piece of shit. So you need to learn to, if you are objectively step outside your body and look at you and be like, here's all the wonderful things I can sell you, if you're talking about an acting agent. Don't be like, oh, please represent me, please. I'll work so hard. Be like, why are you so good? What stands? As I was saying to you, what makes you different? Don't try to beg them for anything, because people smell desperation. It's so off-putting. And if you're a writer, your writing will speak for itself. And there's been all this. Don't listen to all those rules about don't send us hard copies, send us don't follow up. I emailed United, Independent, all these people. I didn't even bother spending more money on headshots, because I was like, I'm just going to fire off emails, and I got representation. So if an agent wants to represent you, they will. And if you can sell yourself well as a product, take yourself out of the equation and just look at all the merits that you can bring and pitch it like that. It's a pitch. And that's, if it's a strong pitch and it's a strong product, you'll find your people.
I think chasing in a nice way as well is not a bad thing to do, and maybe people don't do that enough if it's done. Because I think if someone, I'm thinking about when scripts come into the inbox, and obviously a lot to read, and you do sort of have to choose, especially if they are unsolicited. I just don't get through them all, but I will sometimes read I will read them sometimes, and that normally those are maybe ones where someone has emailed me a couple of times and they seem like they have a really nice approach, and they also, it just sort of sticks in your mind, and then you just think, actually, I'm going to read that. Yeah.
And they've personalised a bit.
Yeah.
A bit, I saw you at, or this thing you did, or whatever. They've sort of made it personal to you. It doesn't sound like a generic message that they've sent to every producer out there.
And maybe easier things.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't give people too much material, because that's the other thing. I think if you get sent, sometimes people say, I've written 3 different stories, and here's, just a lot of attachments, and you just kind of think, God, I'm not going to open that for a long time. Whereas someone just says, here's the first 5 pages, I'd love to hear what you think. That's actually quite an easy amount to read, and you could just give a few thoughts on that, and then that might lead to a conversation that would involve you reading the whole script.
I suppose it's about being professional as opposed to being nice, or, anecdotally, there is that thing that if women insist, they're seen as being aggressive, whereas if men insist, they're seen as being dynamic. And I think that does have some truth. However, I think just as a woman, if you just stay professional and be true to yourself, represent yourself as you are, I think, as Jing said, your people will find you, or you will find your people. I think. I think as women we bend ourselves out of shape a lot. I have, in my time, bent myself out of shape because I'm really just a very angry woman from the north. I spent quite a lot of time trying to pretend that I'm not, but I am. And I think if I'd been true to that a bit. Although there's some people would say I was angry always, but anyway, if I'd been more true to that when I was
passion, anger converted as passion.
I think if I'd shown myself a bit more when I was younger, I might feel a bit happier about where I was, because I would feel like I had been true to myself, and I think that's the best way, especially when you're just starting out. Fuck 'em. Just fuck them.
I also think we take things so personally. It's taken me 12 years, and weirdly, I don't know about you, but like the older I get and the more actors I meet on my journey, we get more spiritual as we get older, because we realise that when we're younger, we take everything like it's like a stab in the heart, and it's like, no, you just didn't read my email. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's a certain distance you need to, and that probably only comes with age and experience or whatever. But I know what you mean, and we're very vulnerable people.
Do you think if you told yourself that now, you'd actually listen?
It's hard, because it's that stupid advice, like, oh, don't be nervous going into a casting. Oh, okay. And when I had depression, I was like, don't be sad, fuck off. You can't fake an emotion, and it's just, I think it's that thing of when we come in with a neediness, we undervalue ourselves. But when we start to, and that's the whole like spirituality side of things, when you actually own your own worth and you respect yourself, you carry that into the room, and people respond to that.
Also, not like you were saying, not being needy and thinking, oh God, please employ me. It's, do you want to do that job?
Yeah.
Do you like those people who are sat opposite the table? Do you think this is going to be a creative environment that's going to help you to flourish and develop? Because we often, or I feel I've often been waiting by a table for little crumbs. When actually I should have been saying, do you know what? Take your crumbs and shove them, because actually
I'm going to the buffet.
I'm going to the smorgasbord with my dogs.
I think that's a perfect place we will have to finish. The message, I guess, is to go into the room as an equal, and being equal. That too, as an equal. But I guess that's essentially what the message is in general, isn't it? Is equality is what we're all trying to achieve. It's certainly, as we've heard today from our fabulous panel, it's not an easy solution. It's not going to be fixed in our 45-minute talk. It's not going to be fixed for some time. But with all change in all issues, I guess awareness and raising that awareness, taking ownership of the issue is the first step in doing that. And the work that our panel here are doing and taking on that responsibility, is an amazing thing to be doing. And I think we should all be thankful for the effort that they're doing. But they can't do it alone. It takes everyone here, every single person in the industry, to take responsibility for that and own it. And only once that happens will we will really see change in equality, I think. So, but anyway, I will stop talking. Let's, if we could, just do a huge round of applause. I think you guys were fantastic. Just a couple of other thanks. We thanked the H Club earlier. Again, it's thanks to them for allowing us to use this great venue. There are quite a few Mandy people around, so if anyone has questions or anything, then they will. They're there around. Find them. Thank you guys for doing the logistics and everything. Almond audio visuals, Tanya's taking photos around, Luke the technician, thank you very much. The bar is open. Enjoy it, have a drink, ask any additional questions, and just thank you all very much.
A very quick round of applause for our very able moderator, I feel as well.
It's the first time we've ever done it.
Oh, well done.
Thanks, guys. Hey.
I'll just take this.